That's right. Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here, and welcome to the Stanzas 10 and technically Stanza 11 recap for the Sorcerer's Apprentice Endgame, the armchair Imagineering smash hit happening right now on WDW Magic's Imagineering forums. And with me tonight is one of the great co hosts of the competition. Joining me once again, Mr. D Hindley. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. I'm eating a tuna wrap right now. Hear any additional sound my way? Um, yeah, I can't complain. How's everyone else doing? How you doing, Tiki?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm gonna buy myself a Six Flags season pass, head up to Discovery Kingdom this weekend because I'm kind of jonesing for a theme park fix after Knott's. And it's
Yeah,
been a couple of years since I did Discovery Kingdom. Well, I sat out Discovery Kingdom in 2018, so I haven't been there since Fright Fest in 2017. So it's been a solid year and a half since I've done Discovery Kingdom. So I'm rather
very
excited for that.
that mostly unnecessary Harley Quinn ride they've got.
I know, right? I'll get to check that one out.
I think they were technically when I was there, they were calling it the grand opening day. Um, they were trying to pull off a thing where, for the first few hours of the day, the only people allowed on it were to have been the people with the highest value season pass, which costs like $500 or whatever to get, and nobody has them. Can't imagine what kind of
Right.
Six Flags nut you'd have to be to have such a thing. I mean, I had the chain wide pass as it was, and eventually, like nobody was going on the damn thing, so they eventually just opened it up about an hour later, and a trickle of people just started coming in, but there was no hype. Whatever crowd was there.
Well, I mean, there was probably about as much hype for Harley Quinn as there was for the Daredevil Chaos Coaster, which is the other super loop in the park.
Well,
And
that
I
one's
remember when that opened, it was just like a very resounding meh.
yeah. It seems the appropriate response. It's just kind of it was humorous to me how much effort they initially put into well, the limited amount of effort that a regional Six Flags put into trying to usher up hype. But
I was actually there on opening day for the Joker, and that was actually a pretty fun opening day because there were media outlets there, and they had a Joker walk around character taking pictures with people. I believe
Joke
they had a camera rigged to one of the two cars, so that was a fun time.
and that ride necessitates hype. It's a good ride.
Uh-huh.
I mean, any RMC is a good ride in my experience thus far. Um, it would be on my lower end of the ones that I've done, but even so, that makes it on the higher end of overall roller coasters.
All right. So to transition us into the topic tonight, we're talking Halloween Horror Nights. Of course, we're going to be going over the last two stanzas in Act Two, as well as talking about the pretty relatively straightforward results of the Cursed Courtroom. And you know what? Just to make it fun, maybe we'll do a fantasy draft. How do you feel about doing a fantasy draft?
I'll let you run that, and I'll make some commentary. I'll try to be careful on that. I don't want to put my thumb on the scales too much as one of the hosts and judges.
Well, I understand that, but I don't know.
Yeah, if
Look,
we
if
need
I
to,
were here, it'd be a lot easier to do. But we're at a point where there's 10 people, and I feel like a fantasy draft would be fun. So,
sure.
all
Yeah, I
right, so
think
we'll
we're
do a fantasy draft of the remaining 10 people at the end of this thing. But let's let's kind of since we have a little bit of extra time here because this is going to be a relatively straightforward podcast. I feel like we can be a little bit more loosey goosey and conversational. So let's kind of have a general conversation about haunts at theme parks. Like, what do you think of them?
I mean, I like them. This round was my idea amongst the various judges. I thought it would be a really interesting change of pace from more Disney centric stuff that we tend to focus on. Like it would be the tonally the furthest thing from a Disney round, while still making sense with very few words in the prompt. As far as this is a normal thing. I mean, one thing I find interesting about haunt mazes, to me at least, is they're kind of like the closest thing we have today to a modern Fantasyland dark ride. I mean, they're not rides, but they they retell an existing story usually, in condensed form, and they expect you to bring your emotional connection from the original film
Right.
reaction.
That's a really interesting observation. I'd never thought of it that way.
I'd hoped to have said that in the reviews, but I never got around to it.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up writing my review. I couldn't sleep after reading their presentations, not because they were terrifying necessarily, but I was just so excited about them. I wrote the reviews at like 1 a.m. or something before finally going to sleep. Because I found both ideas really exciting. They demand a different sort of knowledge set from the Imagineers. About half of our players overall, I want to say, have no real knowledge of the horror genre whatsoever. And the Gaston's Bar Brawl is designed so you can have niche rounds like this where some players aren't going to be as capable. It would be horrible to do a week or week half long thing on a topic this limited. Especially, we ended up having the two topics that were chosen, Phantasm and, well, I think only maybe one person per team knew about either franchise in advance. So everyone else was discovering these things. And I don't know if you knew about either of these things, or if these are both brand new to you.
I knew about both of them. Bendy, I have a little bit more familiarity with. For me, it's pretty much like Five Nights at Freddy's meets Cuphead, and then that's a
Incidentally,
little
Nights at
bit.
Freddy's something. Both teams debated doing a Five Nights at Freddy's, and I think they both quickly rejected those because it was just too on the nose. Because their game's pretty much scare maze, and it's all jump scares, which is like that's the fart joke of the horror realm.
I mean, I'm hearing really good things about us not having jump scares and being really effective, and I'm getting more and more excited about tomorrow night.
Oh, what are you doing a haunt thing tomorrow night?
Why are you gonna see it tomorrow night?
Oh, us. Oh, it's out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I won't be seeing it tomorrow night, but I'm going to be seeing it very soon. I didn't know it was already practically out.
Yeah, tomorrow night. I am
Awesome.
just brimming with excitement over it.
That's one. Yeah, if only to time this a little differently, we might have been able to get someone to propose an us maze.
Oh man.
Which I mean, it's got to speak to you because they filmed a portion of that at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk.
Of course. Yeah, that's like the main like to me there's two main appeals of us, which is the premise of the doppelgangers. I've always been fascinated with the idea of doppelgangers. And then yes, the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk is definitely a draw for me in terms of the setting.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's going to beat out the best horror film filmed at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. Hopefully.
And there's been a few of them.
I only know those two, and then was it Sudden Impact, that Dirty Harry movie?
Yeah.
That was filmed at the Boardwalk. That's not a horror film, but we're definitely being a little more loosey goose.
All right, really quick with the haunt stuff. What are your thoughts on Scary Farm in particular? Because that's the only major event I've been to outside of the Fright Fest at Discovery Kingdom, which I wouldn't exactly call event.
I think Scary Farm, it's the original Haunt, for one thing. It kind of created the whole Haunt franchise or genre or whatever you want to call it. So historically speaking, it's incredibly important. And I would say it's a universal level of quality. They don't have the budget or the IPs available, but they are the next game in the market as far as Haunt goes.
I mean, you see,
Except
to me,
the
I almost kind of prefer. I almost kind of prefer. Maybe it's because I'm biased with. I love Knott's a lot more than I love Universal.
and
But
Universal inspires no particular passion locally.
yeah,
That
exactly. I feel like Universal's more of a tourist park.
it definitely is. There's every time I go there, it's over 50% Japanese tourists. It seems there's something about Hollywood that has a particular draw to the Japanese tourist set. Um,
uh
and it was more than 50% Japanese at Universal Japan. But that was expected.
All right,
I mean,
but what I'm saying though is I actually really prefer the original ideas that play Knots as opposed to generally speaking the hey let's. I feel like HHN has been a little formulaic the last few years where they'll have like okay we'll have the popular horror TV show maze, we'll have the hot movie of the year and have that be a maze, then we'll have like a classic 80s movie and have that be a maze. You know what I mean? And it's like I don't know, it's like I feel like every year, at least for the past few years, they've kind of had the same basic structure to what mazes they do, and they just kind of fill it in with different IPs. Whereas what I love about Scary Farm is like Scary Farm might reuse mazes more. Like I haven't really kept up on the history of Scary Farm as much as HHN, but I feel like Scary Farm just has significantly more creative ideas. I mean, the Tooth Fairy, Paranormal Inc., Pumpkinhead, Dark Ride. I mean, these are just the big highlights of the year I attended Scary Farm, you know? And
yeah.
I don't know, just all four of the ones I mentioned are just significantly more original than anything I've seen on I've seen from just the idea of just reusing an IP.
And the reusing of the IPs it's a sin that Universal Hollywood specifically seems to fall under. Universal Florida I've not been to, but I've seen their list of mazes. Theirs are always a little more original. Like they do the original icons for each year, who have an overarching theme that every maze is supposed to vaguely tie into. Although the tie-in is always incredibly vague. I mean, I think the interesting thing, Universal Hollywood has the advantage of being right next to all the studios, so they're able to take advantage of the IP resources if they can get the original mold of some of the makeup for the actual films. Or like in the case of, I predict that they're going to do a Killer Clowns from Outer Space maze this year. They did it as a scare zone last year, and they did that with the full cooperation of the Chiodo brothers, who directed the original film, who are primarily special effects guys. So they did all those things. So I mean, they have that as if you have that opportunity, you might as well take advantage of it. But it does lack that. I mean, Knott's has always had the homespun original feel in everything they do, and that rubs off on the Scary Farm as well. The Scary Farm is also less dark. I think kind of on purpose, these are the two premier haunt attractions around, apart from the standalone attractions that they have in the LA area, like they have the Haunted Queen Mary or the Haunted Hayride, which is awful. Um,
Yeah.
but Universal be the one that goes hard R, and Scary Farm is a bit more PG-13. Even if they might have some of the similar ideas, like you could see, Scary Farm has an ongoing maze. I forget their name, which is basically a kind of knockoff of Texas Chainsaw, and Universal Hollywood has done a proper licensed version of the same thing, and you could see between the two how their difference of tone impacts what it is they're doing. Like if you're a parent with a middle schooler, I would say go to Scary Farm, not Halloween Horror Nights.
Uh-huh.
And that's kind of, locally speaking, that's the known thing. But Halloween Horror Nights gets a lot of attention. Like I sat in on a panel at Monster Palooza last year with the creators of Halloween Horror Nights, and they clearly pour their heart and soul into this event. They were creating something for last year's event. They revealed it for the first time. This was back in late March when the last Monster Palooza happened. They revealed that a year of horror. They had a scare zone with 12 different characters, each one for a different month, representing a different holiday, given a time to be overlaid. But they were trying to be very careful about, not just have a set of bloody acts, something so default. If you're trying to do a Christmas scary idea, they did something a lot more, to the point where you would almost not be able to tell what it was. I think it was an elf that was reindeer carcass or some, and they went out with other months as well. And this was, one scare zone, a whole idea in this case. Trying their, being as intentional as an animation character designer and in creating something really heartfelt. But yeah, there's a lot of passion just in the makeup community around here. Which is
Oh yeah.
Monster Palooza and Halloween Horror Nights. That's what they're all about.
Oh, really quick, just besides the original ideas at Knott's, like the Tooth Fairy is one of the most insane things that I've ever done just because of the sound design in it. And Paranormal Inc. has just an outstanding opening sequence.
Yeah.
But one of the other things I love
about
about Scary Farm is I love the opening ceremony with it's very simple, but it's very effective. You're just walking through Ghost Town, and Ghost Town is just drenched in fog, and you can't see in front of your face.
And they usually get Elvira to be the for Scary Farm, which is always neat.
She actually, I actually saw her last year there. Her last year there was 20, I believe it was 2017.
No, she's been doing that for ages.
Yeah. Anyways, all right. I'm sure the people that are watching actually want us to talk about the project. So, are you ready to get right to it?
Yeah, we can go on. And so far, I'm not seeing anybody in the chat. Although that might be a technical issue on my end. I've got my laptop up and running, but yeah, let's move on to the projects.
All right. So, we're just going to go in the order that they were presented. So, Team Warriors presented first. And they went with Phantasm, Revenge of the Dead.
Had to get that out of there at some point. I love Phantasm. I probably know more about it than even anyone on Warriors.
So the big disconnect for me comes from because I only know Phantasm by name. I've never seen Phantasm. I don't really know anything about the concept. And I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to be blunt with you guys. For me, because of that, I felt a real disconnect with this project. I didn't know what the hell was going on.
I think Phantasm it's a difficult concept to grasp if you don't already know. It is an incredibly weird series. It's basically surreal horror. Actually, the more I watch of it, the less I. But there's some central imagery. There's a mortician at his mortuary, the tall man, the central villain of the series. He's this like extra dimensional, inhuman human skin, goes around stealing bodies around to turn them into his infernal army of the night. He digs up the bodies, he shrinks them down into the size of dwarfs, who go around wearing robes. They look like Jawas. And the film was made while Star Wars was in production, so this is a total coincidence, but it took them 2 years then to release it, so they've always looked like Jawas. Anyway, you got the Jawa monk demon dwarf things. You have these silver balls that fly around and suction the blood out of you. Tuning fork portals to other dimensions. Canisters where he stores his dwarf army for whatever nefarious purpose they've never quite revealed. And then any other material that gets added to that basic framework just increasingly bizarre. It's almost like the director takes like mushrooms and he writes down his nightmares, and those turn into movie.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think this kind of I don't have a lot to say about this one because, like you said, it is a very difficult concept to grasp, and I know you're trying your best to explain it, but all I'm hearing is like dwarves and what? Like I don't know, man. I'd probably have to actually just sit down and watch the movie. The tall man seems like a fun villain. I'll give you that much.
I mean, the tall man I would consider he's more obscure than most other iconic horror villains, but he's definitely like an iconic horror villain from the 70s or 80s with a whole franchise behind him. He's of that caliber. And I think for the crowds that go to the Hollywood Halloween Horror Nights especially, there is a big fandom for Phantasm. They call themselves fans with a H. It's enough of a cult classic, and it's known around these parts. Like I've seen things for it at Monsterpalooza and so forth. I mean, I think it would play in this setting, but it would be a hard sell for people who don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, if you could use the maze to recreate the sensational impression of the first film, which would be a fairly easy thing to do, then it's going to make as much sense to people as the movie does, which is to say it will mostly not make sense still. Because I can't reiterate enough, these Phantasm movies do not make sense. All right, people talking now, so let's see what's going on. Twilight Zone and Behind the Magic. I forget which one that person is, but yeah, Behind the Magic agrees. He or she has seen Phantasm, and it don't make no sense. But yeah, there's just a little bit of Phantasm talk going on there. I mean, I think to repeat what you said is the presentation just didn't sell the idea. I can see more what they're going for because I know the material.
Of course.
Only from a couple of YouTube videos that I'd seen previously. So theirs was a harder sell for me, at least. And I think they did a better job of getting across the tone of their material and making it appealing to somebody new. Phantasm was a write-up for the walkthrough, and outside of that, there was not very much done with the presentation. Like there was... it's jumping ahead to point to what Team Prince's did well with theirs.
Yeah, I thought the presentation was really bare bones in this one, and I think it just kind of sorry. I think just really this just really speaks to I don't know, it just really goes to show just how important presentation is because frankly I really think out of all the projects this season, this might be the biggest blowout. I really do. I mean, if you know Phantasm, you might get something more out of this project. But for me, having only bearing, like, passing familiarity with Bendy, mostly through seeing thumbnails of him on YouTube videos that I don't watch. You know, I got so much more out of Team Prince's project. I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like I don't know. This is one I really struggled with. It was just there was nothing about the presentation that drew me in, and as weird as it is, maybe it was just the wrong IP to choose. I don't know.
I think, well,
I
just
feel like
what would be realistic and acceptable for Horror Nights. Phantasm is a good IP. It's not a good IP necessarily for a team competition like this one.
exactly.
Because it was nobody on the team, I think, except for James G, who proposed it. He was also the manager and he did the write up of the maze. He was the only one who came in with any knowledge of Phantasm. And I don't think that he was ever able to successfully communicate what it was to everybody else. So there was that struggle of, you know, what others were doing never quite tied back. So there was no, but with Bendy, I mean, just the visuals of the presentation constantly reiterate the visual style, and they tied it into the kind of material that Universal would put out for such an event, for such a maze. Like they made it feel a lot more tangible, which I think could have easily been done for Phantasm type. Bendy was a riskier choice in that it's a video game is something that Halloween Horror Nights has only very rarely touched upon so far. I think they've done Silent Hill, and offhand, I can't think of any other video game properties that they've done.
I'm surprised they haven't done Five Nights at Freddy's yet.
Yeah, and everything they've done has been filtered through the film iteration rather than taken directly from the game.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, there's a whole rich series of materials to work with, and video games are likely going to be staged like a scare maze many times anyway. You've got a first person walking through a scary atmosphere. And speaking of the video game things, Twilight Zone says that in retrospect they should have gone with the Metroid idea that they were bandying about, because it would be video game and it ties into the Nintendo life that Universal has now.
Metroid would be a fantastic scare maze. That absolutely would be.
It would be. I think there's. I mean, you know, when I start thinking about what would make a great scare maze from video games or from other sources, like there's so much potential. I'm kind of surprised.
Like, Resident Evil is an obvious one.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised neither team ever brought up Bird Box when they were brainstorming this.
Nah, get Bird Box out of here. Nah,
No,
I'm not a Bird Box fan.
am I? I'm just saying because it's the trendy horror thing at the moment, and Universal has a history of working with Netflix. Because there's probably going to be another Stranger Things maze this year.
More than likely, yes.
But simply put, is if you could come up with a way to effectively blindfold your scare maze guests, not that that would be itself doable or legal, but if you could have a very sensory deprivation maze to recreate some of the concept behind Bird Box, that could be a very interesting.
Okay, you see, I'd much rather have a Quiet Place maze.
I think that would be hard to pull off because most of these scare mazes are super loud, and the whole point of that is to have people in the line shrieking at top volume all the time. Which a Quiet Place, you'd have to keep that super quiet somehow.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, between the two, I'm a much bigger fan of A Quiet Place. Um, let's hear it for Jim Halpert.
Yeah. My dream maze for Halloween Horror Nights has always been and continues to be Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
I could see that as one of their stage productions, which I don't think they've ever done. But like now that they've retired Bill and Ted, and incidentally, I just saw today that apparently Bill and Ted 3 is officially going to be made. But anyway, yeah, since they retired that, I think Abbott and Costello would be a great live show comedy routine. I don't know how it would work as a maze, especially.
Well, I think you'd frame it, kind of in the same way you do the other horror comedy mazes, like Krampus, for example. You just kind of have it be like kind of have a tongue-in-cheek element to it, have kind of like fun carnival jump scares in it, and have I don't know. It's just always kind of been an idea of mine. Anyways.
I mean, I can recall in the past when they had that permanent Universal Horror maze all year round with Frankenstein and Dracula and such, and they would do unique plays on it during Halloween Horror Nights. Like they would do, imagine if Dracula was an '80s villain instead. What would he be like in that context? And same with all the others.
Uh-huh.
And they would do that as a one-off seasonal thing. So they could have done a one-off seasonal thing where they added Abbott and Costello to the existing classic monsters maze.
Okay, you see, that would have been great. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
And that I think that could have been done. There, unfortunately, Universal seems perpetually kind of unsure about what to do with their classic monsters. In the modern age, at least, like that whole dark universe concept, which just never got off the ground. And I don't know this for a fact, but I have a feeling Del Toro would have presented his Shape of Water script to Universal originally, said, "Hey, let's make this as an official Creature from Black Lagoon movie," and
Mm-hmm.
you would have come back with notes about, okay, here's how you make it more uh, commercially viable. And instead, no, he just wandered off and turned it into a Best Picture winner instead.
Right, right. Anyways, um,
We got a good little discussion going on, mostly from Twilight Zone about Metroid. Um, Mostly, they're talking about how not Ripley, that was stupid. Ridley would have been way too big, or
I
maybe.
don't know. I think you could do Ridley as a puppet.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, did you see what they did with the American Werewolf?
Yeah, yeah,
Or
exactly.
effects like puppetry, which in both of the presented mazes. This is something that Universal has kind of pioneered, which I mean, they have some impressive puppet works. I think that's something they've done that's been very impressive recently, just on a technical side, is they're figuring out how to stage some of these more fantastical '80s films in a live setting.
Hmm.
How to create organic jump scares with a giant puppet. And I apparently this is a Smash Brothers joke that went over my head is what this was, about Ridley being too big.
Oh, yeah, yeah, of course.
But yeah, that's gonna be because I'm not gonna be, if the video game is not like specifically from the '80s, I'm a lot less likely to know it. But yeah, because I still play my old NES. But yeah, speaking of the video games, Bendy.
Yeah, let's get into that.
And yeah, I'll say up front while he is getting this in place, some of the additional stuff that was created for this presentation really sold it. My favorite thing from this presentation was the overall map with the whole alternate universe of scare zones and scare maze. I don't know if you got a chance to look over that at all, Tiki. There were every single maze idea was really intriguing. Like they had a
No, I didn't really get a chance to look over that.
all they really did was they just found the logos from all the other properties they felt like referencing,
Uh-huh.
put them on the universal map. Probably they took an old map from a real Horror Nights, but it it made it feel realistic. You had the Bendy maze, but then you had also a Jaws maze, which I have a hard time picturing how that would work, but I would love to see it done. Oh, incidentally, this is kind of a little tangent, but one thing I was kind of hoping to see from either team, which was not done, would have been to make a maze located out on the Terror Tram area.
Hmm.
Like to, for instance, to create something around the Psycho House. Because I mean, Universal Hollywood, they have the Terror Tram, the daylight tram ride, but they'll take you out to the Psycho House and to the War of the Worlds airplane set, which you get to walk through both of those on foot, and they act as scare zones with like zombies racing around and with the fog lights going on and everything. Um, and I know they've got some soundstage space out there, so if you could add an actual scare maze out to the Terror Tram area and take advantage of the extra space, like the outdoor space and some of the standing sets, I think
So
there's
basically, like a large maze that encompasses both like an outdoor section and a soundstage.
right. With more space available rather than just the overflow queues and the alleyways that they have to work with in the main park. I mean, it could have resulted in something something very which interesting challenge. But I mean, they both did more traditional mazes and they did a good job with them. So
All right, so this concept art is just incredible, and it's definitely the thing that really drew me into this whole thing.
this
Any idea where they came up with it, or is it just really good Photoshop, or what?
I I don't know Bendy well enough to say. I think some of it is like they did a purported walkthrough of the maze, which is footage from the game itself. Which I mean that's something a first person video game gives you the opportunity to make a presentation with those kinds of visuals already.
Oh yeah.
Um, the atmosphere for this one, if it could be nailed, because this is a lot less uh, overtly horrific. It's not a violent maze in any regard. You know, it's scary Disney characters leaping out at you. So if yeah, you know, it would be an interesting one, and they do a good job with these events of having mazes that fit different tones, like you were talking about the comedic mazes. And this one would be a kind of surreal, beautiful maze, not as gory or off-putting, but it would be. I think it would be a worthwhile one to have. And especially like the way they have these projection effects going on to make it feel like a living cartoon. Like they reference Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railroad as the kind of tech that could be used, and I guess that's still a little nebulous what that would be, but that Universal could achieve, even on a smaller budget, one time only thing like this. Yeah, one
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, I pictured the tech more just traditional projection mapping, which by the way, the projection mapping these days is getting insane. It's like, have you seen that Mix Magic show at Disneyland?
No.
Yeah, you know, Pi kind of had mixed reactions to it, but I loved it just because I've never seen such impressive projections on the Matterhorn before. I mean, just for that reason alone, it was just like I thought it was incredible. I mean, I think they can do pretty much anything with projections these days.
This is the new one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Not as many pyrotechnics, but I think it more than makes up for it with the projection work.
Which I think that's especially they've got parks where they're not do as much with pyrotechnics now, so they're doing more projection mapping stuff to it saves on budget, on having to have a you don't have to shut down fantasy to do projection mapping. uh, One thing I remember once in Universal, they had a scare zone. It was supposed to have been like a post-apocalyptic thing, so they had the projection on the buildings made it look like they were crumbling into dust,
Oh, nice.
which was a really neat effect. Not wholly convincing. You could see, like, the building in total blackness. You could still sort of see the form.
Uh-huh.
Build it when they were hoping you were kind of paying attention to something else, but it was still a neat, um, a way to kind of imply something a lot bigger was going on.
All right, so let's just talk about the structure of this thing because that's my favorite part of it. It's I think it just flows so well as an actual maze because you've got the animation studio, and any Disney fan should know the layout of an animation studio. You know, you've got all the different departments. You've got the recording studio, the animation section, the foyer, and and it all just really blends together. It just seamlessly flows, and that's one of the main reasons why I think this team kind of blew the other team out of the water because the other team, like all the sections were just kind of like, all right, it's like we're going for the funeral home and dwarves and I don't know. This felt a lot more natural in terms of like there's a very natural progression to what's going on and a good familiarity with the layout of where you're going.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the thing about the other one, to go back to it, is the film actually does suggest a very natural flow, which is the flow that they did. Because the story of Phantasm does involve the kid is slowly creeping further and further into the mausoleum, and with each new room, there are weirder things that he discovers. So the progression less that of a maze already. So yeah, had it been sold a little more effectively, I think you would have gotten that from both projects. They certainly they spatial concept with this one, which is crucial to making it a coherent maze. And it's not just like one of the worst mazes that I've seen a book report maze.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's disconnected scenes from whatever story it is that they're telling. It's just, oh, here you see Michael doing the next scene that he had in the movie, and then oh, here's the next one that he was in, and it gets very repetitive, and there's no real kind of coherence from one transition to another. In the worst examples.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's exactly what I like about this maze is that it just it takes a fundamental geography that makes sense and applies it to the story and they just kind of run with it, and for all I know it might be a book report on the game, but it doesn't feel like a book report.
Well, and I think in the case of, if the game could support a book report that's like this, I don't know the game well enough to say that it is or isn't either, but it's a good example of when a book report would work. Because in a way, I think a book report of Phantasm would be an effective maze.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like a book report of Metroid would be a good maze. I mean, it would be severely condensed.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I with Metroid, it's like either you have to work in all the lore, which would be very dense, or like working on a single game. I don't even necessarily know if there's enough there to go off of. So Metroid's a tricky kind of gray area.
I think it would be hard to convey the sense of exploration and repeating your tracks and everything, which is pretty crucial.
Right.
Because
Although if we wanted to design, if we wanted to kind of break some new ground and design a maze that was non-linear, and again, obviously there'd be kind of fundamental sort of logistical loopholes you'd have to jump through to make that happen. Metroid would be a good area to pull off a perhaps non-linear theme park maze.
Yes. Mazes like that have been done, but not in a theme park. They're hard ticket mazes, and there's a lot of those around here. Which, like, there's some that you're going to spend like $20 to $50 for a single walkthrough of the maze. Be a multi event that's so long. Like most content, you're saying, uh, say, yeah, the scare actors can't touch. They can blindfold me and take me away to another room. At that point, it starts crossing over with the escape room.
Uh-huh.
Um, like a lot of this in the LA area, it's a lot of people who are tangentially connected to the film industry and doing stuff like this during the holiday season. And there's a lot. There are certain known, like there's something called a horror campout. I forget exactly what it's called. I think it ended up being kind of a Ponzi scheme, but it's supposed to have been a week-long camping expedition, which is called knock off Jason Voorhees, effectively. Like they're trying to more long-term horror type stories, which is interesting. I think like the Scary Farm, they did a maze once, which was a lot more along those lines you're of having escape room elements and more interaction with the characters. They did it one year, but had full throughput. I think they were only able to get like 15 people through it in an hour.
Yeah, you see, that's the problem. That's the problem.
At Horror Nights, especially, that is the most over-attended event. Like, unless you're getting a front of the line pass, you'll be lucky to do each maze once during an evening at that thing. Like, I actually don't really like going to Horror Nights anymore because it's just gotten so overexposed, and they have more uses every year to try to make up for it. It starts mid September now, but do you have more things to say about the presentation?
Honestly, not really. I really like the first of all, just this is gonna sound silly, but the choice of the yellow background and the black text, it all looks very classy, kind of fits the classic Hollywood motif very well. Just aesthetically, it's just very pleasing to the eye. And concept art, I'm pretty sure the concept art is just screenshots of the game, but they just blend together and they make for really good reference photos, and they just kind of illuminate what the text is describing very well. So just all together, I really don't have that much to say about this project, but it's just a very well designed from top to bottom. It really kind of fits the genre, it understands the genre it's in, and really goes for it, and doesn't feel like a book report. It really just kind of feels like it flows from room to room very well, and I like it.
Oh, one thing to add to this, the project manager for Team Princes was Pergron Studio, who actually does design scare.
Oh, really?
Only I think he just opens up his own house as a scare maze every year. And I
Uh-huh.
did not know this when assigning the role. He was chosen on purpose. There was something he said, I think in his team PM when the game first started and they were just introducing each other. He said something like, "I wrote my first horror novel a few years ago." And I saw that and I said, okay, he's going to be doing the Halloween Horror Nights round.
Nice, nice.
And I think that was definitely this one was his wheelhouse.
Hmm.
Um, Everybody on Prince's put in a great effort with this, and I think Bergeron was. I mean, to move a little onwards because we got our award ceremony in between after this round. Bergeron ended up getting second as the project manager award. Pi beat him. Pi also got MVP for the year, but Bergeron was the only other project manager with 2 wins. Granted, not everybody had an opportunity to be a project manager twice, but Twilight Zone believes that Bergron will be a celeb someday. He's this horror maze designing zookeeper. He was actually when the project posted, he was out on the open ocean going after sharks. I kid you not.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he was out tagging them for research purposes, which in my own mind I was turning it to he was out on the Orca with Quint, which is not accurate, but that's how I was picturing it. Oh yeah, and both team did candy or food for their event, for their maze. You know, nice little touches like that show attention.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Let's wrap things up here unless you have anything else to say about the Bendy project.
Not anything I could think of right now. We've covered them.
Okay, let me see. Let me get to the the cursed courtroom image, and we'll talk about the results of that.
But yeah, we did our stanza 11 mandatory cursed courtroom for everybody. A bit of a Sorcerer's Apprentice tradition at this point. The self-reflection round. Ask everybody, how have you grown? What was your favorite, least favorite thing? What new skills? Yada yada. Not putting that very well. I wrote those questions so long ago. And it was more just as a way to encourage everyone to just talk about it on their own a bit. And for the most part, got some very good responses. Everybody responded very quickly. There were no holdouts. We saw 2 eliminations at the end of the Cursed Courtroom, which was a very lengthy discussion behind the scenes over who should be removed and how many, and so we ended up we got rid of Space Mountain, or rather he fell on his own sword, volunteered to leave, which you predicted from the very start that he would do that at some point. He was just there to act as the Obi-Wan to everybody else.
Yes, he was the Obi-Wan Gandalf mentor figure, and as we all know in the hero's journey, those characters don't make it to the end of the story.
Usually they die at the end of Act 2.
Ah, there we go. There we go. How very appropriate.
And even the choice of having the end of Act 2 be Horror Nights was intentional. The end of the act needs to be the lowest point.
Uh-huh.
Frightening. You feel the presence of evil the most. So, as much as you remarked that we had restrooms come right after restaurants on purpose. Okay.
Right.
Okay, you're there. Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
But yeah, so anyway, Space Mountain, he left, and everyone else wanted to continue, and we ended up eliminating Fire Mountain as the only other elimination, which I hope I'm remembering that right. But the main reason behind that was he was the only response who said he had not learned any. Everyone else who was playing, yeah, Fire Mountain, he's the one we eliminated. Everyone else could cite new things they had learned, be it technical skills, ways to work as a team, what have you. And he said, "Nope, nope, I'm the same as I was when I started." So, if you have to eliminate somebody, then that was the choice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course you had to get it down to an even number at 10 people, so I imagine that was a factor.
and there was some discussion about removing 4 people rather than 2. The end of this current stanza they're working on will have people eliminated. We need specific numbers at certain points, unfortunately.
Mm,
And they were given the warning up front that there will be 3 eliminations. It seemed to make it ultimately made more sense to eliminate 2 and then 3 rather than to do 4 and then 1.
right, right.
Kind of ramp up the intensity. And we might see things get even a little more intense going into the finals. I want to be a little mum on that, though.
Really quick, I love the choice to have the 3 judged villains as the representatives for the Cursed Courtroom. That was an inspired choice.
You must feel especially strong about Frollo.
Oh yes, oh yes. I mean, I love me some Frollo, but I love that the judge from Mr. Toad was in there. That was a deep cut.
Yeah, that one, when I was designing the posters months ago, the original visual was the one from the film, and no one else recognized him. So I ended up using the model from Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and then suddenly everyone got the reference.
Right, right.
Yeah, because trying to think through, okay, it was a good way to just get more villains in there. Because yeah, there are a lot of good villains who didn't cut. Maybe at the end of the game, I'll share some of the extra that I made for some of the challenges that did not get used. Like we even have this friends on the other ride optional challenge going on right now with Dr. Facilier. Uh, that was supposed to have been a unique challenge at one point, not with the same prompt, but I was just recycling a poster and saying, okay, we're going to have this extra little solo challenge. Which poster that I made would fit it the best? Also, just which poster do I personally like the most? And that's yeah, we've seen Evil Gidget turn in one so far. The rest are going to be doing on Sunday. If anyone else is working on them, personal solo project, design an attraction for your favorite Disney villain. And that might have some importance later on in the game.
Right. Anything to say about the awards?
Um, well, the awards, they kind of stand for themselves. You can see who won what. That was a lengthy back and forth with my co-hosts. We each put out our 1, 2, 3 for each category. Actually,
Okay.
I mostly deferred to the other two. I found it really hard to narrow down like that. So I mostly just saw what they thought and um, added in my own two about it. And
Yeah, very classy move to give Spacey Lifetime Achievement Award. I think that's very well deserved on his end. Because of course, without season 4, I think Sorcerer's Apprentice. Because the thing about Sorcerer's Apprentice is that season 3 wasn't a bad season, but it kind of had it had a few awkward moments in it. It had some behind the scenes drama involved. And T Cool won that season, and that was a very deserving winner. I kind of miss T Cool. I wonder where he went. I hope he's still around somewhere. But I digress. Anyways, so space, like you said in the post, like the game would not be what it is today. It would not be this big sprawling cinematic universe. Space is essentially the Kevin Feige of Sorcerer's Apprentice, and so very well deserved on that end for him.
which would, I guess, make me the James Gunn.
Why? Because you were fired for making controversial tweets and then rehired.
No, I just, or maybe you want to call me a Russo brother. I don't know. Or, but yeah, certainly. Well, Ace and Kevin, myself, the three co-hosts, none of us were even aware of Sorcerer's Apprentice before season 4 was announced. So
uh,
clearly, we're inspired by the uh, the approach that Space took, and we're trying to pay tribute to it and evolve it. But we're following the template that's there with what we're doing. Um,
all right. So without further ado, let's get to the new teams, and the best way to break them down is to do a good old-fashioned draft.
all right, this is you, Tiki.
All right, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to just go hold on one second. I'm gonna we have to do a flip a coin as well, but we're going to like basically I'll pick someone, then you'll pick someone, and we'll just go back and forth, and we'll kind of round out our teams, and the one who has. Do you want to do? Let's just make it simple and just have it be the one who picks the winner wins
Oh, okay.
instead
Yeah,
of doing like a whole point based system.
that sounds really complicated, and I wasn't ready for that whatsoever. So, um, yeah, but I guess you'll get first choice.
Well, no, hold on. I'm gonna pull up a flip a coin.
Okay, or I could go grab a real coin,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
but I'll have to. Oh, wait, no, here I got something. I've got a eraser shaped like an ear. I'll flip this. All right, do you want the front of the ear or the back of the ear?
No, no, no. Hold on. Hold on.
Wait, no.
I can literally do. I can do this on the. I can just screen share a Google coin flip. That's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
So,
Very good
so
concept.
let's say heads. You go first. Tails. I go first.
Okay.
Okay, let's do it. All right, heads. You get first pick.
Um, pie.
Of course, of course. I think Pi is pretty much a pretty big front runner at this point.
Yeah. Right now, he's not as able to be active because of his schedule as he's been at other times, which
Uh,
might be a bit of a liability for the next round and a half or so. But especially if he makes it into the final, I think he has the talent to do what we have going on there. He's certainly shown himself adept at a lot of different aspects of the game.
all right, there's a couple different directions I can go in this one, but I think I am going to go. I'm weighing back and forth between two people who happen to be a power couple this season, Twilight and Nate. I
Yeah,
think I have to go with Twilight. I think Twilight's got the dedication. She might not necessarily be the biggest like knockout in terms of skill level, but she's one of the most dedicated people. And I think dedication in these games goes a long way. So I'm going to go with her.
anything more to that, or is that about?
No, we're not doing a full cast assessment. I'm
Oh,
just basically I'm just listing my reasons for picking these people.
I think my next choice will be Pergron,
Pergron, okay.
who is fairly new to the whole Imagineering competition scene altogether, I believe, um, and has proved quite adept at it. Has just taken it like a fish to water, basically.
All right. I'm gonna go with well, screw it. I guess I'll go with my second choice, which would be Nate. I'm gonna have Twilight and Nate both on my team, which is, by the way, kind of an opportunity I'm surprised you guys didn't take, is to pair those two up.
Oh, we had them paired up until then, so we intentionally broke them up.
That's true. That's a good point.
because they were intentionally paired up for the Gaston's Bar Brawl after doing Santa Cruz together.
Mm-hmm.
Because they do have that.
Adelaide and Nate are my team, so who's your third pick?
I'm gonna go with James G.
James G. That was going to be my next pick. Good choice.
Yeah, he's been a power in other Imagineering competitions. This one is not as much of his wheelhouse. I know the technical side has been a bit of a complication for him, but if he can find a way to um, sort of get beyond his difficulties with it, he has definite ability and passion.
All right, four people. Wait, no, sorry, five people left on the board, I believe. Yeah. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Evil Gidget because they already won the. They already won the Dreamfinder One Little Spark, the One Little Spark competition, and they're itching to probably win another one. And they definitely have a good grasp on the technical side of things. So that's where I'm going to go.
Evil is another good, relatively new player, and I feel fairly similar to Nate in a lot of ways. Um, Kind of like the dark side of Nate.
Uh huh.
I'm gonna go with another veteran player and choose Disney Dad.
That's a good choice. That would have been my next call. All right. Disney Dad is like pretty simply. Disney Dad has the time and commitment, then he can crack out great things. It's just a question of with his busy life, if he can really have the time to make it all the way. But he wants so you want to be an Imagineer, so who knows?
I mean,
Okay.
his big challenge right now is prepping the Great Movie Ride season 2 at the moment, which is going to be this. He's hosting that, and the last
Mhm.
one. Were you part of that season, Tiki?
I believe I wanted to be, but I think with what happened is, if I remember correctly, I think I had to drop out early for scheduling reasons, or I know I did something with it. I don't quite remember. Maybe Disney Dad remembers more than I do.
Nonetheless, it was a really fun game. I think one of the of what I've seen live and in person, one of the best host games that we've had. And yeah, so what would your next choice be?
All right, let's see. I'm going to have to go just to make sure my So You Want to Be an Imagineer peeps aren't the last two picked. I'm going to go with a So You Want to Be an Imagineer veteran and go with Disney Man 1. Basically out of brand loyalty at this point.
Oh, he is a strong player as well. That's definitely true. Um,
All right, so it's between Brer Oswald and Outbound.
okay. I mean, I kind of hate doing this at all, especially as a host. I don't want to come across as being biased at all, or to.
Would you like me to make the last pick?
If you could, yeah, I wouldn't mind it.
Okay, let's just say the last round's a snake round for any fantasy players out there, because I understand what position this would put you in. All right. You know what? Just so there's no hurt feelings, I don't know that much about Outbound. And again, I'm gonna have to go with some brand loyalty here and pick Brer Oswald specifically because I'm supporting Team So You Want to Be an Imagineer. And that's literally the only reason I'm doing it. It's not to disparage one way or another between the two. So I will go ahead and pick Brer Oswald. So with that, I feel like I have a really interesting team with basically two pairs in the So You Want to Be an Imagineer players of Disney Man 1 and Blair Oswald, and then the power couple that is Twilight and Nate with Evil Gidget kind of in the middle as a wild card. So I like the combo going on there. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
So, are we doing this like a fantasy thing where we wait and see how they all do afterwards, or just see who wins.
This is just a winner take all.
Okay, and of course,
It's
I have some degree of control over that, so I'm gonna make sure that my
like,
picks
let's say it comes down to Twilight versus Pi in the finals. You're going to be rooting really hard for Pi.
That's really unfair to say that. I'm going to be impartial.
No, I know. I'm just kidding. But okay, folks, those are our fantasy teams. Team Tiki is going to be Twilight, Nate, Evil Gidget, Disneyman 1, and Brer Oswald. Then, meanwhile, Team Hindley is going to be Pi, Paragon Studios, James G, Disney Dad 3000, and Outbound. All right. Well, I think we stretched this out just about as long as we could go. I'm surprised we made it over an hour with how little we actually had to talk about here. Any final thoughts on your end? Anyone in the comments?
Let's see what the comments have to say. Everyone's just excited about how evil Gidget is.
He's pretty damn evil.
And Kevin B, I assume that's KMB. So my co-host is in here live towards the very end of this. Hi there, Kevin.
Hey there, KMB, if it is in fact KMB, not just some random Kevin that stumbled in.
He's the only Kevin I know. I hopefully
it's like it's Kevin Perjurer.
Yeah, it's KMB. I've just referred to him as Kevin for the last several months now.
Right.
Got our 90-page long private message thread where we've been preparing and then orchestrating the whole game. What else? Still working on artwork and such for some of these later stanzas, so there's a lot of work in progress still on our end.
And I guess my final thought is just honestly, you guys have kind of blown me out of the water, and I say that very humbly and very graciously. I could never do something in the scale of what you guys are doing just by myself on So You Want to Be an Imagineer. So You Want to Be an Imagineer has never been this connected with continuity, has never had this level of dedication to getting as much feedback as possible. And I got to tell you guys, you really are... right now, I am putting So You Want to Be an Imagineer on a bit of a hiatus. I really doubt that there's going to be a season in 2019, probably in 2020. But you guys are really giving me a run for my money, and I got to step up my game, man. And you guys are kind of lighting a fire under my butt in the best of ways. So I thank you for that.
Oh, well, my pleasure. I look forward to seeing what you eventually come up with. I know it helps to have two other co-hosts to share the burden, able to put in focus on certain things, which on my own I wouldn't have put the amount of time into.
Right.
Got some comic for stanza 13 that I'm working on right now. Actually, is pretty epic.
Cool. Hey, KP just subscribe. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate that. Anyways, so thank you guys so much for watching. You know what, D Hindley, I think just one last announcement is you guys have been working really hard on the story. I wanted to get a halfway point in the story podcast done, but I think what I'm going to do is just when all is said and done and it's all wrapped up, I think the last podcast of the season will be a story recap.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and we'll just go through everything, and we'll screen share all the comics, and we'll just have a damn good time yucking it up about all the storyline stuff. So look forward to that, guys. I can't wait to see what happens in Act 3. And yeah, see you guys all later. For those of you on spring break like Pi is, enjoy yourselves, be safe, and we will when's the next project due?
This Sunday at midnight.
Okay, so I'm assuming that next Wednesday is probably going to be the next recap, and like, it thrills me to say we're actually caught up. We're actually caught up. I can't believe it.
That's awesome. Yeah, you got through the whole bar brawl. That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So,
once again, to everyone that's listening and playing, there's been a lot of really great projects. I'm having a blast seeing what everyone comes up with.
all right. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight, D Hindley, and I will see you all later. Have a good one.
Good night.